Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take a stack of groundbreaking research and distill it into the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight tailored just for you.
And today we're plunging into one of the most persistent and, frankly, fascinating challenges in AI reasoning.
Exactly. While large language models, LLMs, have redefined what we thought possible in areas like, natural language generation, their core architecture, the transformer, faces some inherent fundamental limitations.
Especially when it comes to truly complex, goal-oriented reasoning.
You might find yourself immersed in countless papers on chain-of-thought prompting, trying to coax more sophisticated reasoning out of these models.
But what if there was a fundamentally different approach? One that isn't just an incremental tweak, but one inspired directly by the very architecture of the human brain.
It's a question that truly gets at the heart of current AI scalability and capability limitations, doesn't it?
It really does. And our source material for this deep dive is a groundbreaking paper titled Hierarchical Reasoning Model, or HRM, from Sapient Intelligence.
And this isn't merely an incremental update to existing paradigms, is it?
Not at all. It proposes a novel recurrent architecture designed to achieve significant computational depth, all while maintaining impressive training stability and efficiency. It's quite a departure.
That's right. Our mission today is to unpack this paper for you, our audience of seasoned experts in machine learning, data science, and mathematics.
We're going to explore how HRM, with a surprisingly lean parameter count of only 27 million and minimal training data.
Minimal is the key word there.
Right. Minimal data is demonstrating nearly perfect performance on tasks that completely stump much larger, state-of-the-art LLMs.
When we're talking really tough tasks, like complex Sudoku puzzles, optimal pathfinding in large mazes.
And even the famously challenging Abstraction and Reasoning Corpus, ARC, things that really require deep, structured thought.
Exactly. We're going to peel back the layers to understand the what and the why behind this model's exceptional capabilities, focusing purely on the rigorous scientific content presented in the paper.
No speculation, just the facts as presented. So let's jump right in.
Okay, let's unpack this core issue first. The fundamental constraints of current LLMs for reasoning. The paper makes a rather pointed observation right from the start.
You mean about the term deep learning?
Yeah. We call these models deep, yet in terms of their effective computational depth, current LLM architectures primarily Cayens. Transformers are paradoxically quite shallow.
That's a critical distinction to grasp. I mean, despite stacking many, many layers, the effective computational depth of these models is fundamentally fixed.
Which has real theoretical implications, right?
Absolutely. It places them squarely in computational complexity classes like AC0 or TC0. Now, for an expert audience like yourselves, this isn't just academic jargon.
No, it means something concrete.
It means current LLMs, despite their apparent depth and scale, are fundamentally constrained. They're limited to tasks solvable with a fixed, shallow number of parallel operations.
It's like trying to solve a complex algebraic problem where you're only allowed a very limited number of simple steps, no matter how deep your model gets.
Precisely. They fundamentally lack the iterative, sequential problem-solving capabilities needed for true algorithmic reasoning, the kind of Turing-complete computation that our brains excel at.
And we can see this limitation quite clearly in practice, can't we? Like in tasks like Sudoku.
Definitely. If you look at Figure 2, left in the paper, it illustrates this point perfectly.
What does it show?
The authors show that if you take a transformer and simply increase its width, making it broader, essentially you observe no performance gain whatsoever on Sudoku Extreme Full.
So just making it wider doesn't help with the reasoning part.
Not at all. The model just doesn't get better at solving it. It's only when you increase its depth that you see some incremental improvement.
But even then.
Even then, with very deep models, the performance remains far from optimal. This strongly supports the conjectured limitations of the current LLM scaling paradigm for these types of complex algorithmic reasoning tasks.
It's a clear signal that simply piling on more parameters isn't addressing the core architectural challenge for this kind of problem.
Exactly. Which brings us to the prevailing method LLMs have used to approach reasoning, chain of thought, or COTE.
Yes, COTE. Everyone's familiar with it.
Right. COTE externalizes the reasoning process into sequential token-level language. It works by breaking down complex tasks into what are supposed to be simpler, intermediate steps.
Essentially turning an internal reasoning process into a series of explicit linguistic outputs.
It's been an ingenious way to coax more out of these models, no doubt.
But the paper isn't shy about calling code a crutch, and it makes a compelling case for why. What are the main issues they highlight?
Well, there are some significant drawbacks. First, it's incredibly brittle.
Brittle how?
COTI relies heavily on human-defined decompositions, or at least decompositions that mimic human steps. If there's a single misstep, or if the sequence of steps is even slightly misordered, the entire reasoning process can derail.
Which fundamentally ties the reasoning process directly to explicit linguistic steps at the token level.
Exactly, which, as the paper points out, might not be how true internal reasoning actually works in complex systems like the brain.
Okay, brittleness is one. What else?
Secondly, it's remarkably data-intensive. Generating these extensive token sequences for complex reasoning often demands a significant amount of training data.
Which isn't always available, especially for highly specialized or novel tasks.
Precisely. And finally, there's the high latency issue.
Right, generating all those tokens takes time.
A lot of time. Because the model has to generate a large number of tokens to spell out its reasoning steps, the response times for complex tasks become inherently slow. This makes it inefficient for real-world applications requiring rapid computation.
So if Co is essentially a workaround, a crutch, what's the alternative the paper proposes?
It argues for a significant shift towards what they call latent reasoning.
Latent reasoning.
Yeah.
Meaning it happens inside the model.
Exactly. This is where computations occur entirely within the model's internal hidden state space, rather than being externalized as token sequences.
Which aligns more with how we think our own brains work, right? Language is output, not the thought itself.
Precisely. This aligns with the understanding that language, for humans, is primarily a communication tool, not the fundamental substrate of thought itself. Our brains perform complex, coherent reasoning incredibly efficiently in a latent space, without constantly translating it into explicit language.
Okay, but achieving truly deep latent reasoning. That's been the challenge, hasn't it?
Hugely challenging. Naively stacking more layers in standard deep networks while seemingly intuitive is notoriously difficult.
Because of vanishing gradients.
Primarily, yes. Vanishing gradients compromise both training stability and effectiveness. And then, while recurrent architectures might seem like a natural fit for sequential tasks.
They have their own problems, like early convergence.
Exactly. Traditional RNNs often suffer from early convergence. Their hidden states settle to a fixed point too quickly, causing update magnitudes to shrink and effectively stalling computation. This caps their computational depth.
Preventing them from truly exploring complex multi-step reasoning paths.
Right. And then there's the training overhead. These models heavily rely on backpropagation through time, or BPTT.
Which is computationally expensive.
Very. And memory-intensive scaling linearly with the number of time steps, OT.
And maybe critically for this paper's inspiration, biologically implausible.
That's a key point they raise. It's unlikely the brain assigns credit that way.
So the picture is clear. Current LLMs hit a wall when it comes to true reasoning. But the paper suggests the blueprint for overcoming these limitations might come from biology.
It absolutely does. The human brain serves as a compelling model here. It achieves the effective computational depth that contemporary artificial models completely lack.
What's the key mechanism?
By organizing computation hierarchically across cortical regions that operate at distinct timescales, this hierarchical and multi-timescale operation is fundamental.
Enabling deep multi-stage reasoning.
Yes. Think of how recurrent feedback loops are crucial for iteratively refining internal representations. Slower, higher-level areas guide the process.
While faster, lower-level circuits execute the details.
Precisely, all while maintaining global coherence. And crucially, the brain achieves this depth and iterative refinement without incurring the prohibitive credit assignment costs of BPTT.
That's the biological genius. And the paper distills this into 3 foundational principles that directly inspired HRM's design. Can you walk us through them? What's the first pillar?
Certainly. The first is hierarchical processing.
Okay.
This principle suggests that the brain processes information not as a single flat stream, but across a hierarchy of cortical areas.
Higher levels for abstract stuff, lower levels for details.
Exactly. Higher level areas integrate information over longer timescales, forming more abstract representations like understanding the plot of a story. Meanwhile, lower level areas handle immediate, detailed processing like recognizing individual words or processing sensory input. This division of labor is crucial.
Makes sense. And then there's temporal separation. This one sounds really interesting, connecting to brain waves and things.
It is. This is a truly profound insight from neuroscience. These hierarchical levels in the brain operate at distinct intrinsic timescales.
Like the slow theta waves and fast gamma waves mentioned.
For instance, yes. Slow theta waves at, say, 4 to or 8 Hz, and fast gamma waves at 30 or 100 Hz. This temporal separation allows for stable, high-level guidance of rapid, low-level computations.
Like a commander giving slow orders and platoons executing quickly.
That's a good analogy. A strategic commander gives slow, high-level directives while multiple platoons execute rapid, detailed maneuvers, constantly refining based on the immediate situation, but aligned with the overall plan.
But the paper clarifies HRM doesn't directly map to specific brain frequencies, right? It's the concept.
Correct. It's important to clarify that while HRM is inspired by this, its high-level and low-level modules are conceptual abstractions. They don't directly map to specific neural oscillation frequencies. It's about the principle of separate interacting timescales enabling more effective, stable computation.
Got it. And the third principle, recurrent connectivity. This seems key for iterative thinking.
Absolutely key. The brain features extensive recurrent connections, those critical feedback loops.
That let us refine thoughts.
Precisely. They enable iterative refinement, leading to more accurate and context-sensitive representations. It allows for a continuous process of updating and improving internal models based on new information or ongoing computation.
Which takes time, but avoids that problematic BPTT credit assignment issue.
Largely, yes. It avoids the deep credit assignment problem associated with BPTT that artificial networks struggle with when trying to learn long dependencies.
Okay, so hierarchical processing, temporal separation, recurrent connectivity. How does HRM actually translate these sophisticated biological principles into its architecture? Let's break down the core components. Starts with the input network, FI.
Right. HRM operates within a standard sequence-to-sequence framework. So first, an input network, FI, takes the raw input vector, X, and projects it into a more workable internal representation, X. It's the gateway.
Simple enough. Then the two core recurrent modules, starting with the low-level module, FL. What's its job?
The FL module is engineered for rapid, detailed computations. It updates its hidden state, ZIL, at each individual time step I.
And what influences its update?
Its computation is conditioned on its own previous state, Xi1L, the current state of the high-level module, Xi1H, which critically stays fixed during the L module cycle, and the input representation, X.
So it does fast work within the context set by the higher level?
Exactly. This design enables it to perform fine-grained, fast-paced operations.
And complementing that is the high-level recurrent module, FH. This handles the slower, more abstract parts.
That's right. The FH module is responsible for the slower abstract planning and overall strategic guidance. And critically, it updates its hidden state, ZIH, only once per cycle.
Once every T low-level steps.
Yes, every T low-level time steps. And this update occurs by integrating the FL module's final state at the end of that cycle. It essentially distills the detailed computations from FL into a higher-level update.
Okay, then after all that processing, there's the output network, FO.
Correct. The FO network takes the final state of the FH module after N full high-level cycles have completed and extracts the final prediction, E. This is where the internal reasoning becomes an actual output.
So how does a single forward pass actually unfold with these interacting parts and different timescales?
Okay, so the model unfolds over N high-level cycles, and each of these N cycles consists of T low-level time steps.
So N times T total steps in one pass.
Right. NET time steps for one full pass. But it's also important to remember that adaptive halting mechanism we'll discuss later.
Ah, the ACT part.
Yes. That dynamically determines whether the model terminates its computation after a pass or continues with additional passes, so it can think longer if needed.
Okay, that structure makes sense. But as we said, traditional recurrent networks have those big limitations, premature convergence, and BPTT costs. How does HRM specifically overcome these? Let's start with hierarchical convergence. What's that about?
Yes, hierarchical convergence is really a cornerstone of HRM's design. The fundamental problem with standard RNNs, as we mentioned, is that they're limited by early convergence.
Hidden states settle too quickly, computation stalls.
Exactly. Hidden states often settle to a fixed point too quickly, update magnitudes shrink, and computation effectively stalls. This caps the network's objective depth, preventing it from really digging into complex reasoning over many steps.
So HRM explicitly counters this. How does it achieve that sort of reset for the low-level module?
Precisely. It explicitly counteracts premature convergence through this hierarchical convergence mechanism. During each cycle, the low-level module, FL, does converge towards a local equilibrium.
But crucially,
This equilibrium is entirely dependent on the high-level module state for that specific cycle. Then, after T low-level steps, the high-level module updates using FL's final state.
And that FH update changes the game for FL.
Yes, this update from FH establishes a fresh context for the FL module. It effectively restarts the FL module's computational path, initiating a new convergence phase, but this time towards a different local equilibrium defined by the new FH state.
That's a clever way to keep the computation dynamic. What are the benefits? It sounds like it stops the thinking from just fizzling out.
The benefits are profound. This mechanism allows HRM to perform a sequence of distinct, stable, nested computations. It's not just avoiding stalling, it's enabling structured, multi-stage reasoning.
The H module guides strategy. The L module does the heavy lifting for each stage.
Exactly. The H module guides the overall strategy, while the L module executes the intensive search or refinement needed within that stage. Empirically, you can see this in Figure 3.
What does Figure 3 show?
HRM maintains high computational activity measured by its forward residual over many, many steps. In stark contrast, standard RNNs show activity rapidly decaying.
Which translates to better performance.
Directly. Better performance at any given computation depth, as shown clearly in Figure 2,
Right,
it can actually use the extra computation time effectively.
Okay, that tackles premature convergence. Now, the other big hurdle, backpropagation through time, BPTT, and its costs. The paper introduces a one-step gradient approximation. How does that work?
Right, BPTT is the standard for training recurrent models, but it's costly. It requires storing all hidden states from the forward pass.
OT memory burden for T time steps.
Exactly. Which forces smaller batch sizes, poor GPU utilization, especially for deep unrolling, and as we noted, it's often considered biologically implausible.
So the key insight for HRM's solution is related to convergence. If a network converges, you can avoid BPTT.
Precisely. HRM leverages this by proposing a one-step approximation of the gradient, instead of backpropagating through all t-steps.
It just uses the last step.
Essentially, yes. This approach uses the gradient of only the last state of each module, FL and FH, treating all other intermediate states as constant during backpropagation.
So the gradient path simplifies dramatically.
It becomes incredibly efficient. Output, head, final FH state, final FL state input embedding. That's it.
Wow. That sounds like a huge improvement over standard BPTT. What are the practical advantages?
They are significant. This method requires only O1 memory, constant memory, regardless of the number of time steps t.
That's massive. It unlocks deeper recurrence.
Absolutely. It completely eliminates the need for unrolling through time during backpropagation. And importantly, it's easily implementable with standard autograd frameworks like PyTorch. The paper even provides pseudocode in Figure 4.
And it aligns better with potential biological mechanisms.
That's the argument. It aligns with the idea that cortical credit assignment might rely on short-range, temporally local mechanisms rather than a global replay.
And there's a theoretical underpinning for this connected to deep equilibrium models, DEQ, that approximation.
Yes, exactly. The one-step approximation is theoretically grounded in DEQ mathematics, which use the implicit function theorem, IFT, to bypass BPTT.
But the full IFT involves inverting a complex Jacobian matrix, right? Which is hard.
Very hard, computationally expensive. HRM's approximation simplifies this Jacobian inversion, IJF, to just the identity matrix I.
A clever shortcut.
It's a very pragmatic simplification. It makes the gradient calculation tractable and efficient, essentially capturing the most direct influence from the converged state while still providing stable gradients for training. It turns DEQ ideas into something practical for this kind of deep reasoning.
So HRM's innovation isn't just the architecture, but also these advanced training techniques. Let's talk about deep supervision. What's the brain inspiration there?
The inspiration seems to be the idea that periodic neural oscillations in the brain might regulate when learning actually occurs, suggesting feedback and adjustment happens at specific intervals, not continuously.
Promoting stability. And how does HRM implement this? It involves multiple segments per sample.
That's right. For each data sample, HRM executes multiple forward passes, which they call segments. At the end of each segment, a deep supervision step occurs.
Meaning?
A loss, LM, is computed for that segment's output against the true label, Y, and the model parameters are updated right then and there.
But there's a crucial detail about detaching the hidden state.
Yes, this is key. The hidden state from a segment is explicitly detached from the computation graph before being used as the input state for the next segment.
What does that detachment achieve? Why is it so important?
It prevents gradients from flowing back through previous segments. This effectively creates a one-step approximation of the gradient for the whole recursive deep supervision process.
So more localized learning signals.
Exactly. It provides more frequent, local feedback to the H module, acts as a strong regularization mechanism, and empirically, the paper states it demonstrates superior performance and enhanced stability compared to more complex Jacobian-based methods in deep equilibrium models. Figure 4 shows the pseudocode for this training loop.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, the other advanced mechanism, adaptive computational time, or ACT. This sounds like it mimics our own ability to think harder when needed.
Precisely. The inspiration is very much the brain's dynamic alternation between automatic System 1 thinking and deliberate System 2 thinking.
Our ability to modulate mental runtime based on the task.
Exactly. An intelligent model should be able to allocate more computation when a task demands it and less when it doesn't. Efficiency without sacrificing accuracy.
And HRM implements this using Q-learning. That's interesting, usually associated with RL.
Yes, it uses the Q-learning algorithm to dynamically decide how many segments or computational steps to run. A small Q-head network uses the H module's final state to predict Q values for two actions, halt or continue.
And the decision rule.
The model halts if the segment count hits a maximum, Mmax, or if the predicted Q value for halting, Q halt, is higher than the Q value for continue, Q continue, but only after a minimum number of segments, MMin, have run.
And MN can be stochastic, to encourage longer thinking sometimes.
Right, during training, to encourage exploration. The Q-learning targets are based on getting the prediction right if it halts, or the max Q value if it continues.
No.
And the overall loss, MMACT, combines the main task loss with a loss for the Q-head's predictions.
So what are the benefits of optimizing this combined loss? Does it lead to efficient computation?
Yes, minimizing this loss enables HRM to achieve both accurate predictions and nearly optimal stopping decisions. It learns to adjust its thought duration. Figure 5, A and B, show this clearly for Sudoku Extreme Full.
What do they show?
ACT effectively adapts its computational resources. It keeps the average number of compute steps low and stable, but achieves comparable performance to models forced to run for a fixed higher number of steps. That means significant computational savings.
And the paper mentions inference timescaling as another advantage. This sounds powerful, getting better results at test time just by letting it run longer.
That's a really key capability, yes. HRM achieves this seamlessly, as shown in Figure 5C, because its internal process is designed for iterative refinement.
A model trained with a certain max steps, MX,
Can generalize to higher computational limits during inference without any retraining or changes. You just let it run for more segments.
and accuracy improves.
Yes, leading to improved accuracy, especially for tasks like Sudoku that benefit from deeper search. Though maybe less so for tasks like ARC-AGI, where the solution path might be shorter. It's basically leveraging the convergent nature of its reasoning process.
Now, Q-learning can be notoriously unstable in deep learning. How does HRM manage to keep its ACT mechanisms stable?
That's a fair point. Deep Q learning often needs tricks like replay buffers or target networks, but HRM achieves stability through its intrinsic properties.
Such as?
The paper points to recent theoretical work suggesting Q-learning converges if network parameters are bounded and post-normalization is used correctly. HRM meets these conditions. It uses a post-norm architecture with RMS norm.
A robust layer normalization variant.
Right, and it uses the AtomW optimizer. AtomW, with its decoupled weight decay, helps ensure bounded model parameters, satisfying those theoretical conditions for stability. So the stability comes from the core architecture and optimizer choices.
All right, let's zoom in on the specific architectural nuts and bolts of HRM's modules. It operates within a standard sequence-to-sequence framework, correct?
Yes, that's the basic setup. Input sequence, output sequence. Making it flexible for different kinds of problems, represented as sequences or grids.
And how does it handle the input and output processing specifically?
Okay, so the input network, FI, uses an embedding layer to convert discrete input tokens into vector representations. Standard stuff.
And the output?
After all the internal computation in the H&L modules, the output network, FO, transforms the final hidden state from the H module into token probability distributions. They mention using softmax generally.
But stable max for small data sets.
Right. Stable max for small sample experiments, apparently to improve generalization by encouraging less spiky distributions. The loss is then the standard sequence-to-sequence loss, average over output tokens.
And initial hidden states.
Fixed, initialized by sampling from a truncated normal distribution, and they stay constant. Provides a consistent starting point.
What about the implementation of the FL and FH modules themselves? What are they built from? Transformers.
Yes, both the low-level FL and high-level FH recurrent modules are implemented using encoder-only transformer blocks.
Identical architectures.
Yes, identical architectures and dimensions, keeping things simple. When multiple inputs need to go into a module like FL, getting input from FH, and the data they're combined using simple element-wise addition.
Though they mention other merging techniques could be explored later.
Exactly. More sophisticated methods like gating are noted as potential future work.
And HRM also incorporates modern transformer enhancements, right? Like ROPE and RMS norm.
Absolutely. It's built with modern best practices. Both HRM and the recurrent transformer baselines, they compare against use enhancements found in models like Llama.
So rotary positional encoding. ROPE.
Yes, ROPE for positions, gated linear units, GLU, in the feed-forward layers, RMS norm for normalization.
And no bias terms in linear layers.
Correct. Removing bias terms is another common practice adopted here, thought to help with regularization.
What about the specifics of the training setup? Normalization, placement, initialization, optimizer.
Okay, they use a post-norm architecture, applying normalization after the attention and feed-forward layers.
Initialization.
Weights are initialized via truncated Lacoon normal initialization, good for ReLU-like activations.
And RMS norm details.
They specifically exclude the scale and bias parameters from RMS norm, another detail contributing to stability.
Optimizer.
They use the Atomaton2 optimizer, a scale and variant of Atom, paired with a constant learning rate plus linear warm-up. This whole package, post-norm, Lacoon, Inet, specific RMS norm config, Atomaton2, seems carefully chosen for stable training of these potentially deep recurrent dynamics.
Okay, let's get to the results. The proof in the pudding, as they say.
Yeah.
HRM was tested on some seriously challenging reasoning tasks. What were the main benchmarks?
The paper focused on 3 primary benchmarks with visualizations in Figure 6. First, the RRC AGI challenge.
Aimed at general fluid intelligence.
Exactly. IQ test-like puzzles requiring inductive reasoning. It has 2 parts. RRC AGI 1, focusing on extracting rules from just 2-3 examples.
And RRC AGI 2.
That ramps up the difficulty. Deeper compositional reasoning, multi-step logic, context-dependent rules, symbolic abstraction. Stuff that's doable for humans but really hard for current AI.
Okay, ARC AGI. Then there was Sudoku Extreme. Sounds tough.
It is. It's standard 9x9 Sudoku, but the dataset is compiled specifically from puzzles known to be exceptionally difficult for humans. Think Magic Tour 1465, Forum Hard, Forum Extreme puzzles.
How much harder is it than typical benchmarks?
Significantly. The paper states their Sudoku Extreme dataset averages 22 backtracks per puzzle compared to just 0.45 for something like Sudoku Bench. They used a small subset of 1,000 training examples for the main experiment.
Testing that small sample learning capability again. And finally, maze hard.
Maze hard involves finding the optimal path in a 30x30 maze. The hard part comes from selecting only mazes where the shortest path is long over 110 steps.
Ensuring complex navigation.
Right. A path is correct only if it's valid and optimal. Again, trained and tested on 1,000 examples each. It's a good test for search and multi-step planning.
How was HRM evaluated on these? And remind us about the training setup, the really striking part.
Okay, models were trained from random weights, sequence to sequence, using flattened grids. For ARC AGI, they used data augmentation translations, rotations, flips, color changes, and generated 1,000 variants at test time, taking the most popular predictions.
Robustness strategy.
Exactly. Sudoku used some permutations for augmentation. Maze had none. But the crucial detail, the standout finding.
Only 1,000 training examples per task.
Roughly, yes. Around 1,000 training examples per task. And critically, no pre-training and no chain-of-thought supervision.
That's radically different from how large LLMs are usually trained and prompted for reasoning.
Completely different paradigm. Data-hungry versus data-efficient.
Okay, so with that setup, let's look at Figure 1, which summarizes the key performance highlights. How did HRM actually do compared to the big guns?
The results are really quite stark. On RRC AGI, HRM, at only 27M parameters, hits 40.3% accuracy.
How does that compare?
It substantially beats leading Coty-based models. O3 Mini High gets 34.5%, Claude 3.78K context, only 21.2%. And those models are vastly larger.
So for ARC, it's significantly better despite being much smaller? What about Sudoku and Maze?
That's where the difference becomes even more dramatic. For Sudoku Extreme and Maze Hard, HRM achieves near-perfect accuracy on Sudoku, 99.1%, and very strong optimal pathfinding on Maze Hard, 74.5%.
And the state-of-the-art code chippets?
They completely fail. 0% accuracy,
Yeah.
0%.
Wow. Just Couldn't solve them at all.
Couldn't solve them. And the baseline direct pred transformer, same size as HRM, trained the same way without COT, also failed entirely on these. Even with more data, it barely cracked easy Sudoku.
So previous work also showed large vanilla transformers struggle with these complex mazes too, right? Below 20% accuracy.
That's right. HRM, just by swapping the transformer architecture for its hierarchical framework and adding ACT, gets more than a twofold performance jump over even specialized baselines on ARC-AGI-1.
It really highlights HRM's unique ability to learn robust algorithmic reasoning processes, not just pattern matching.
Precisely. It seems to be genuinely learning how to solve these problems from very limited data.
The performance is impressive, but for understanding how it works, the paper tries to visualize the internal reasoning process, right? Analyzing intermediate time steps.
Yes, this is crucial for interpretability, trying to peek inside the black box. They did this by taking intermediate states at each time step I, doing a preliminary pass through the H module to get a potential state, Zia, decoding that state, and visualizing the result in Figure 7.
Like watching the model's thought process unfold.
Exactly. It gives a glimpse into how the solution evolves iteratively.
And what different reasoning strategies did they observe across the tasks? Let's start with maze hard. How does it seem to find the path?
For maze hard, it looks like HRM initially explores multiple potential paths simultaneously, almost like a breadth-first exploration phase.
Generating options.
Yes. Then, in later steps, it seems to prune away the blocked or inefficient routes, maybe constructing a rough outline of the solution. And finally, it refines that outline through more iterations to find the optimal path.
Search followed by refinement. What about Sudoku Extreme? That requires logical deduction, backtracking.
And the visualization suggests it does something like that. Its strategy on Sudoku Extreme strongly resembles a depth-first search.
How can you tell?
It appears to explore potential number placements, but then systematically backtracks when it hits a constraint violation or a dead end. The paper highlights these backtrack-like moments with red markings in the visualizations. That's a complex search strategy feed-forward models just can't easily do.
Interesting. And RRC-AGI-2, with its inductive reasoning focus, is it also trial and error?
It seems different there. Unlike Sudoku's backtracking, the ARC solution path looks more like a consistent progression. HRM makes incremental adjustments to the grid, iteratively improving it until a solution emerges.
More like hill climbing.
Yes, similar to a hill climbing optimization strategy. It seems to move steadily towards a better state without needing to backtrack extensively. Small, consistent improvements.
So it's not using the same strategy for every problem? It seems to adapt.
That's the critical insight here, yes. The model demonstrates an ability to adapt its reasoning approach, likely selecting an effective strategy tailored to the specific task. This adaptability seems key to its generalizability across different problem types, even with that limited training data.
It suggests a level of cognitive flexibility not usually seen in standard models.
It certainly hints at it. Of course, this is interpretative, but it's a very promising sign.
This adaptability and the whole hierarchical structure leads to perhaps the most profound connection the paper draws. The correspondence with the brain, specifically this idea of emergent hierarchical dimensionality. What's the neuroscience principle here?
Right, this is fascinating. A core idea in systems neuroscience is that there's a strong link between how complex a brain region's function is and the dimensionality of its neural representations.
Higher order areas need more representational space.
Essentially, yes. Higher order areas like the prefrontal cortex involved in complex reasoning have to handle a wider variety of tasks. This demands more flexible, context-dependent processing, which often manifests as higher dimensional state space trajectories.
Compared to lower level sensory area.
Exactly. Lower level areas might operate in a more constrained lower dimensional space, optimized for specific features. This creates an observable dimensionality hierarchy in the brain. Position in the hierarchy correlates with effective dimensionality.
And how do they actually measure this dimensionality of neural states, or in HRM's case, hidden states?
They use a standard measure called the participation ratio, or PR.
How's that calculated?
It's calculated from the eigenvalues of the covariance matrix of the neural trajectories. PR, 2FDA2.
And what does a high or low PR mean intuitively?
Intuitively, a higher PR means the variance activity is spread out evenly across many dimensions, indicating a high-dimensional representation capable of encoding lots of diverse information. A lower PR means the variance is concentrated in just a few principal components. A lower dimensional structure may be more specialized.
Okay, so how does HRM measure up against this biological principle? Figure 8 is key here, right?
Figure 8 is indeed the crucial evidence. Biological studies, like in the mouse cortex, shown in figures 8A, 8B, clearly show this dimensionality hierarchy. PR increases as you move from sensory to associative areas.
In HRM, did it spontaneously develop this when trained?
Remarkably, yes. They calculated the PR for both the low-level FL and high-level FH modules after training HRM on Sudoku Extreme Full.
And the results?
The low-level module's state, ZL, showed a relatively low PR of 30.22. It operates in a smaller subspace.
Suggesting specialized computation.
Right. In contrast, the high-level module state, ZHH, showed a significantly higher PR of 89.95. It operates in a much larger, higher-dimensional subspace.
A clear dimensionality hierarchy, just like in the brain.
A very clear hierarchy, shown in Figure 8C. And Figure 8D adds another layer. If you increase the number of unique tasks the model sees, the dimensionality of the high-level module, ZH, scales up accordingly, while the low-level module, ZL dimensionality, stays stable.
So ZH adapts its capacity to the task complexity, while ZL remains specialized.
Exactly. It shows an emergent separation of representational capacity reflecting their different functional roles.
And the paper even mentions the ratio of the PRs is similar to the mouse cortex.
It's strikingly close, yes. The high-to-low PR ratio in HRM, ZHCL, is about 2.98. In the mouse cortex data they cite, it's about 2.25. It's in the same ballpark.
That's significant because many deep networks show neural collapse, right?
Yeah.
Where representations become less dimensional.
Precisely. Unlike conventional deep networks that often exhibit neural collapse, where last layer features compress into a low-dimensional subspace, HRM fosters this high-dimensional representation in its higher module.
Which is thought to be crucial for cognitive flexibility, like in our prefrontal cortex.
Exactly. It's a hallmark of higher-order brain regions essential for complex adaptive reasoning. It suggests HRM is learning a powerful organizational principle.
And to be sure, this wasn't just baked into the architecture somehow. They ran a control test on an untrained network.
Yes, a crucial control. They took an identical HRM architecture, but with random untrained weights.
No hierarchy.
No hierarchy at all. As shown in Figure 8F, the untrained network exhibited no separation. PR values were low and almost identical for both modules, around 41-42, and they didn't scale with task diversity.
So it definitively confirms the hierarchy is learned. It emerges through training to solve the reasoning tasks.
Absolutely. It's an emergent property, not an architectural prior.
The implication is pretty profound then. HRM isn't just solving problems well, it's organizing itself internally in a way that mirrors biological intelligence.
It strongly suggests HRM has discovered, or learned, a fundamental organizational principle for effective reasoning. By autonomously partitioning its representations into this high-capacity, high-dimensional ZH space and a more specialized low-dimensional ZL space, it mirrors something thought to be fundamental in biological systems.
Though the paper notes it's correlational evidence for now.
Right. Establishing causal links between this emergent hierarchy and the superior reasoning is future work. But it's a very powerful correlation and a compelling hint about effective computational structures for intelligence.
Okay, we've covered HRM's architecture, training, results, and this fascinating brain correspondence. Let's place it in the broader context. How does HRM relate to the long history of algorithm learning in neural networks?
It definitely builds on that rich lineage. You have things like neural Turing machines, NTM, differentiable neural computers, DNC, neural GPUs, all trying to build iterative architectures that learn computational processes.
And more recently, integrating algorithms with transformers.
Yes, like universal transformers, recurrent reasoning tokens, transinar. HRM fits into this line of work, but the paper argues it pushes boundaries.
How so?
Primarily through its exceptional data efficiency and expressiveness. Successfully discovering complex algorithms for things like Sudoku and ARC from just 1,000 examples without explicit algorithmic supervision is a significant step forward compared to many earlier approaches.
And HRM's adaptive computational time ACT also connects to prior work, right?
Yes, it ties into work on dynamically allocating compute, like the original ACT for RNNs by Alex Graves, and things like PonderNet, which aim to improve stability. HRM integrates this within its hierarchical framework and leverages its architectural choices to ensure stability, as we discussed.
What about other brain-inspired architectures like Spawn or the Tolman-Eichenbaum machine? How is HRM different?
Those are interesting comparisons. Spawn used large-scale spiking networks, but relied on hand-designed algorithms for specific cognitive tasks. The Tolman-Eichenbaum machine was inspired by the hippocampus for memory and navigation.
But HRM,
HRM takes a different approach. It's not about mimicking specific brain regions or handcrafting rules. It learns complex, multi-step reasoning end-to-end for tasks challenging even for giant LLMs, and crucially, without pre-training or task-specific design. It's about learning the principles of effective computations suggested by the brain, not just its components.
the multi-timescale structure also resonates with hierarchical memory models, doesn't it?
It does. Models like hierarchical sequential models or clockwork RNNs also use multi-timescale recurrence, often to capture long dependencies or mitigate forgetting in sequence modeling.
Does the paper suggest linking HRM to memory more explicitly?
Yes, they suggest that incorporating hierarchical memory concepts into HRM could be a promising future direction, potentially enhancing its ability to handle even longer range dependencies or tasks requiring more persistent state.
A key claim is HRM's Turing completeness. What does that mean practically here, and why is it important?
Like some earlier models, each a universal transformer, HRM is computationally universal. Given enough memory and time, it can theoretically simulate any Turing machine.
Which directly overcomes the fixed depth limits of standard transformers.
Exactly. But while earlier recurrent algorithm learners were also theoretically Turing complete, they hit practical walls premature convergence, BPTT costs.
Making their Turing completeness more theoretical than practical.
Right. HRM, by addressing these practical challenges with hierarchical convergence, the one-step gradient, and ACT, moves much closer to practical Turing completeness. It can actually be trained on long reasoning processes, solve hard search problems like Sudoku, making that universal computation capability more real.
How does HRM contrast with using reinforcement learning for chain of thought? That's a popular approach for improving LLM reasoning.
It's a very different philosophy. While RL is used to fine-tune LLMs with CU, like RLHF, evidence suggests it mostly refines existing COT-like abilities rather than discovering fundamentally new reasoning mechanisms.
And RL for Katu can be unstable and data hungry.
Often, yes. It can require lots of exploration and careful reward engineering. HRM, in contrast, uses dense gradient-based supervision in a continuous space. It's generally more stable, data efficient, arguably more biologically plausible, and avoids spending uniform compute on every single token in a thought chain.
Finally, the paper briefly mentions linear attention. How does HRM's recurrence relate to efforts to make attention more efficient?
Linear attention aims to replace the quadratic complexity of standard attention, often using RNN-like state updates to maintain context over long sequences. It's about efficiency.
But the paper argues that just changing the attention mechanism doesn't fix the core reasoning limitation of fixed-depth transformers.
Correct. They argue that linear attention alone doesn't solve the reasoning depth problem, for which COT is still needed as a workaround in standard transformers. HRM's focus is achieving reasoning depth via its hierarchical recurrence. It uses full attention internally for simplicity now, but acknowledges linear attention could be integrated in the future for efficiency gains, especially in resource-constrained settings. The core innovation is the recurrent structure, not the attention mechanism itself.
Wow, what a deep dive indeed. We've really unpacked the hierarchical reasoning model. It feels like a genuinely innovative, brain-inspired architecture that's pushing the boundaries of AI reasoning.
Absolutely. By leveraging that hierarchical structure and multi-timescale processing, HRM achieves remarkable computational depth while staying stable and efficient during training. It directly addresses some core limitations of current LLMs.
And its ability to solve these really hard problems, ARC AGI, Sudoku Extreme, Maze Hard with just 27 million parameters and only about 1,000 training examples.
And crucially, without pre-training or chain of thought supervision.
That's a direct challenge to the prevailing scale-is-all, non-hierarchical paradigm in AI, isn't it?
It really is. It's not just an incremental improvement. It suggests a fundamentally different, potentially much more efficient path towards general reasoning capabilities.
So this work isn't just about a single new model architecture. It feels more like it's about translating deep biological principles into working AI systems.
Advancing us closer to foundational frameworks that are perhaps capable of more general, maybe even Turing-complete computation in practice. It definitely offers a fresh perspective.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on.
Considering how HRM seems to autonomously discover these organizational principles like hierarchical dimensionality that so closely mirror findings in neuroscience, What are the deeper implications here for how we understand intelligence itself?
Does this emergent hierarchy hint at some kind of universal blueprint for effective reasoning, one that spans both biological and artificial systems?
And how might this insight shape the next generation of AI research? Could it lead to a shift away from purely scaling up existing architectures towards developing more biologically plausible, computationally efficient, and perhaps ultimately more capable models?
Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We hope this exploration is giving you new insights into the exciting frontier of AI reasoning and the incredible potential of brain-inspired design.
Until next time.